Welcome everyone. Let's take a look at this week's agenda in Canvas. Now, I actually have the entire week's stuff published for you already. There's one thing that's not quite done yet, but it's not till like Thursday, Friday's virtual day. It's linked but not completed yet, so just be aware of that. But I'm guessing not too many people are going to do this quite. So everything for the week, again, I'm always listing the current week on top. Okay, this right now I'm making a video of recording the in-person instructions. So if you aren't here, you could be watching this right now. So we're going to take a quiz. We're going to introduce the cell analogy project that we're going to be talking about. When we look on the to-do list, okay, I really encourage you, quick question. When you guys are looking at this on your virtual days, are you clicking on the to-do list, or are you only clicking on your to-do list, which has due dates? Are you clicking on this and reading this? Okay, I hope so. Because if you're only looking for due dates, some stuff isn't going to show up. So Canvas, right? But then we have this video for you to watch. And then there's the Google form for questions. Okay? So you're going to watch a video. You're going to fill in the Google form, take a screenshot of your Google form at the end, submit that screenshot. Now, there's 3 ways you can watch this video, and they all accomplish the same task to watch the video. But I've embedded the video.
This is an animal.
You can click on this, which will take you to the YouTube
This
link.
is an animal.
Or, ultimately, you're going to have to fill out this Google form. So if we click on the Google form, Mr. DeGrand, another biology teacher, he made this for us, and he embedded the video right in here.
This is an animal.
Okay, so there's 3 different ways you can watch it. Ultimately, you're going to fill in this Google form. So this is one way. This is okay. The problem is I can't hit full screen. It doesn't actually, it's not a feature, so you're watching this small tile. Not great. The nice thing about this, though, is you can go through and you can say, these all, like you can look at the question, these are all description of cell membrane except, and then you can go and you can watch it until you find that. When you can go and you can kind of scroll up and down and start and pause and rewind and to answer the question. I really think 2 devices might be ideal. Have the video on one, have the Google form on the other. Kind of give a preview of what questions you're looking for before you watch the video. I would say it's probably a good method. Or you could split the screen even. It's up to you. You figure out what's going to work for you, but just realize there's questions that accompany the video that you're going to watch. Take a screenshot once you submit it. Once you hit submit here, take a screenshot, submit that screenshot in Canvas. If for some reason you forget to take the screenshot, then you're going to have to let me know that I'm going to have to dig for your score. But I'm not just going to randomly look through a list of 100-some scores hoping to find one person that forgot a screenshot. Okay, so if that's the case, you need to let me know that somehow. Okay, so that's that. The other thing for tomorrow is there's a quizzes review that I want you to take. So just like before, if you click this should take you right to the activity. Otherwise, here's the game code, but this should load the game directly. And then take a screenshot of your final score and submit that. It's cell organelle. What's the function of ribosomes? What's the function of chloroplast? What's the function of a mitochondria? Stuff like that. So that's your projects, your to-do list for tomorrow. In person on Wednesday, we're going to spend a little bit of time doing some reviews using Quizlet on cell theory and cell organelles, and then we're going to give you more work time on this cell analogy project that I'm going to introduce in a little bit. Okay? Then Thursday and Friday, finish your cell analogy project, and then a different video with a different set of questions that are still yet to be built, but they're all linked there. Okay, questions about the week in general? I'll talk more specifically about what the project is in just a moment. Okay, so here's the cell analogy project. The cell analogy project you can find by clicking on modules, then you can either click on the to-do list or the agenda for today, and then right here is the cell analogy project. And I have no paper copies of the cell analogy project, and I didn't really see a whole lot of purpose for it, because this document does not get turned in. You will submit your project, not this document. So I didn't print them off. So I've embedded it, so if you want to view it from Canvas. Otherwise, if you click here, it'll launch the doc that you can go and it'll look like this. If you want, you don't have to, you can make a copy of this. And then you could start editing this and making your notes directly on here if you want. Some people are doing it on a piece of scratch paper in their notebook. Some people are using notes on their iPad to jot some of this stuff down. It's up to you, but this is kind of the criteria. We're gonna take a quiz in a little bit. After the quiz, you should start thinking about your analogy. An analogy is a relatively everyday occurring event that you can use to help explain a complex thing. So in your notes, the theme that the analogy we use is a cell is like a factory, and I'll review that after the quiz. So when we go through and we come up with an analogy, we're trying to say, why is the cell like a factory? Well, the cell is like a factory because the ribosomes are like the small machines. The ER is like the assembly line. The Golgi apparatus is like the shipping department. The lysosomes are like the cleanup crew. Okay? Because, right? So we're going to go through and you're going to create some type of representation of this. You have some choices. You can either choose a plant or an animal cell. You're going to want to read through this in more completely. And then before you leave today, hopefully I can get around to each and every one of you, and I want to approve your idea. I want to know what you think your analogy is going to be, and I'm going to ask you a couple of them, like, why do you think the cell is like a car? Why do you think a cell is like a boat? Why do you think the cell is like Disney World? Okay? So don't just, as you're going through, I would suggest a rather broad, but not too broad. So like one person in my last class, I think is gonna make it work, but they said, Mike, a cell is like the engine of a car. I'm a little concerned that that's too specific. Now they seem to know a fair amount about cars and car engines. So they were talking about, well, I think like the cylinder is like this, and the engine block is like this. I'm like, oh, okay, I think it'll work. Where maybe a little bit, if you were to take a step back, maybe saying the entire car is like a cell because, you know, someone worked at a coffee shop. So they're gonna like, well, I think it's like a coffee shop because. Mr. DeBoer, he co-teaches with me second and fourth hour. He's a big fisherman. He thinks a cell is like a fishing boat. Okay? Pick something you're relatively familiar with. Don't choose something that's very like unknown to you. Like I think the cell is like the International Space Station. Because about as much as I know about the International Space Station is there's a bunch of like pods attached from different countries. It's floating around in space and people from astronauts are in it. That's not enough. I don't know enough about it in order to make that analogy work. Okay, so make sure you're choosing something that you're going to be able to describe, something you know a fair amount about, and that you're interested in. It's going to make it easier. So you need to choose either a plant or an animal, and then if you choose an animal, you got to have all these organelles. Plant, all these organelles. There's a little bit different because different organelles are in different plants. Okay, make sure you have all the organelles that you need to represent in the analogy. Make sure you include the function of each organelle besides just explaining why it is there. So you need to tell me what the nucleus of a cell does, and then you need to tell me what you think, how it fits into your analogy and why. Okay? The description of function needs to be included on or in your project regardless of how you choose to represent the analogy. So be sure to think about how you're going to display this. So how do you do it? Well, there's lots of choices. Video, comic book, film, a skit, a song, a journal, a paper, a 2D model, like a poster, 3D models, not PowerPoint, not Google presentation, Google Slides, not Prezi. Those are really all the same. Not that. That's not a choice. Okay? A lot of students in the past have chosen clips just because they've been able to say like, hey, it's my car. And I can take a picture of my car and I can press and hold that button and I can record. My car is like a cell because, and then they can open up the hood and say the engine of my car is like the blank because blah, 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 blah. That's how they chose to do it. You have to figure out what works for you and be creative. You have better technology skills than I do. You know about other things that are out there that I don't. Okay? And then there's a rubric on the bottom and how you're going to be, kind of what I'm looking for. So this is your analogy project. Okay? So before you leave today, I want you to go through and I want you to have a basic idea of what you think your analogy is going to be. And I'm going to write it on a piece of paper, and it's okay to change. If you get partway through and say, geez, I don't know if this is really going to work, then you should change. Okay? It's okay to change, especially early on, but this is the big project. It's going to take a while. I'm giving you a little bit of class time today. I'm giving you probably half hour on Wednesday. This is your activity to finish on Thursday, Friday, because it's going to be due on Sunday or Monday if you're an A-Day versus a B-Day. But you guys, right now, are A-Day students, so on Sunday. Again, an analogy is a way to take an everyday thing and try to explain a complex thing. I'll run through the cell one with you in a little bit. Okay? The questions about this right now that you can think of? Okay. When you're done with your quiz, this is what you should start working on. Once I see everyone's done with their quiz, then I'll go through the factory analogy with you to just say, hey, here's the example. You cannot use a factory. I don't know if I mentioned that. You cannot use a factory as your analogy because we already did that one for you. And then we'll run through that factory analogy briefly, and then I'll give you some work time. So if there's no questions about that, then the next thing for you to do is you're going to take your quiz. So there's two different ways you can get to this quiz. From the modules, you can click on this. The little rocket ship is a quiz. It'll take you to it. Otherwise, if you click on today's agenda, take this quiz, will launch the quiz that you're going to take. I think it's 10 multiple choice, 2 multiple check boxes, 1 short answer. I have to grade the short answer. Okay, so once I grade it, the final score will be submitted, but I'm not sure how it shows up. I think it says like still needs to be graded right now. So I am going to be walking around the room, looking over your shoulder to make sure you're not cheating. Oh, my iPad's recording. There it is. Found it. So turn your screen brightness up so when I come and look over your shoulder, I can actually see it. Okay? Don't try to be cheating on me. Don't go back to your notes. This is what you know. This is what you did. This is based upon your homework. Okay? We will go through the factory analogy when we're done. But in the meantime, I would encourage you to open up that Google Doc, start looking through, start thinking about what your analogy is going to be.
So let's walk through this cell analogy of the cell is like a factory. So in your project, you need to go through and come up with something that you think is a good way to represent the cell. Car, a fishing boat, a restaurant, a farm. I've heard lots of different things so far that are really good. So why is a cell like that? So our example of an analogy, you cannot use a factory, but you can come up with something similar to describe this complex thing called a cell. So here's our example. So the nucleus, everything is here in the green is our analogy. So the nucleus is like the boss of the cell that tells everyone what to do. Okay, it's the person in charge of the factory. The ribosomes are the small machines in the factory that will make proteins based on the orders that they get from the boss, the nucleus, and it happens to be written in the DNA forms. The endoplasmic reticulum is like the assembly line where people put together products. In our cell analogy for the factory, the Golgi apparatus is the shipping department that prepares things to get shipped out of the factory. In our factory, we have a cleanup crew that we would refer to as lysosomes. They're the custodians, they're sweeping the floor. If a machine is no longer needed, they will go through and disassemble it and get rid of the pieces. A vacuole in the factory is a large storage facility that, if needed, we can pull some materials from. Chloroplasts found only in plants, are like solar panels on the roof that would take energy from the sun and convert it